Over the course of the NBA season, the hottest topics of conversation are typically fueled around a player's legacy and the constant debates on the NBA's end-of-season awards. These two topics come hand in hand, and due to the nature of the legacy talk being based on accomplishments and accolades, and for the end-of-season awards often becoming narrative-fueled media agenda awards based less on merit and on-court production, and more on what the media determines as their definition of what each award winner should look like. And we've seen this with MVP winners of years past, all having different narratives as to why they should win. Having one player not meet their criteria for the award one year, and then the following season, a player having a season similar as aforementioned player now deserves the award. There's so much that goes in deciding who deserves to win and why, and the process often becomes convoluted. And more often than not, when the media does their preseason predictions, the players they pick tend to ride the wave of media bias and seem like a lock until another player forces and commands respect in the awards race. So what would be an ideal way to recognise the rightful winner of each of the NBA's end-of-season awards? All these awards hold different amounts of weight, so to have similar requisites or to use certain advanced or regular counting stats would be pointless, as it could benefit lesser deserving players. Whether it's a player that while they have the sexy counting stats, their on-court production doesn't match what the stat sheet says, or vice versa. So after much delegation, this is how we're going to find out who is the award winners by the numbers. The criteria for each award is as follows. Sixth Man of the Year. The player's usage divided by their per 36 field goal attempts, and that number is multiplied by the sum of the player's points, rebounds, and assists, the sum of their value over replacement, win shares, player efficiency rating, and their BPM, and the sum of all this is our Sixth Man of the Year score. Most improved player. Simply the player's points, rebounds, assists, steals, and blocks from the 24-25 season subtracted by the same from the 23-24 season, and the player with the highest net growth is the most improved player. Defensive Player of the Year. The player's stocks plus a position bonus, defensive win shares, defensive box plus minus added with crafted NBA's DPM stat, crafted NBA's D LeBron stat, and the player's block and steal percentage added as regular point equivalent, and finally points based off their team's rankings. Rookie of the Year. I split the season into pre and post All-Star blocks and added their points, rebounds, assists, steals, and blocks from each block of the season, and whichever player maintained the highest average is our winner. Most valuable player. The player's player efficiency rating, win shares, box plus minus, value over replacement, the player's games played divided by losses they played in, their points equivalent of their points, rebounds, assists, steals, and blocks, extra points for being on first-seeded teams, and all of this added is their award score. Throughout history, the Sixth Man of the Year award has typically been awarded to the most prolific scorers off the bench. When you think Sixth Man of the Year, the first names that might come to mind are Jamal Crawford, Lou Williams, and Manu Ginobili, and they all fit the mold of microwave scorers off the bench. But sometimes there's more to being a sixth man than just being a bucket. There's plenty of guys in the league that if provided the opportunity, they can get 12 to 15 a night off the bench if allowed to shoot 12 plus times. What gets lost through history are seasons from guys like Andre Iguodala, Alex Caruso, and Michael Cooper. They do everything guys that might not have the sexy numbers as a scorers. Their impact on the game doesn't show up in the box score. Being able to make plays, defend your best guys, and shift energy of the game without needing 15 points to do so. So using my Sixth Man of the Year formula, let's see who really had the most impactful season off the bench. Eligible candidates had to play at least 50 games, score more than 6 per game, and come off the bench more than they started. Among the 93 eligible players, the average award score was 37.3, and with that, the top 10 candidates averaged a score of 56. And the top 10 candidates were Luke Cornett, Scottie Pippen Jr., DeAndre Hunter, Santi Aldama, Russell Westbrook, and the top 5 award scorers being Tari Eason with 56.2 points, Naz Reid with 57.1, Jonas Valanciunas with 57.6, Ty Jerome with 60.5, and the Sixth Man of the Year by the numbers is Peyton Pritchard with a score of 62.85. After averaging 14.3 points, 3.8 rebounds, and 3.5 assists, and being among the leaders in almost every advanced statistic among all bench players while being a key member of the defending champ Celtics, Peyton comfortably led all candidates in what really was a two-man race alongside Ty Jerome, with his season ranking third alongside the previous 5 Sixth Man of the Year award winners' seasons. Most improved player as of late has seemingly been losing its meaning. What once was an award meant to celebrate seasons from late bloomers who went from role players to legit starters or even borderline stars has turned into a parody of what the award should represent. With high lottery picks in year 2 or 3 getting the nod, or a guy who's already a borderline all-star level player scoring a few more points, and in that case, is it really being most improved, or are you just fulfilling your expectations? So I want to return to the roots of the awards and reward the growth from career role players or middling starters who turn themselves into legitimate impact players. To qualify, all you needed was to play 50 plus games. However, the CBA states that players must play at least 20 plus minutes per game for a game to count towards the games played, but we'll be ignoring that. And from there, comparing the players' year-over-year growth in the 5 major counting stats: points, rebounds, assists, steals, and blocks from the 23-24 season to the 24-25 season. Based on that, we found the top 10 most improved candidates were Ty Jerome, Dyson Daniels, Quentin Grimes, Christian Braun, Daquan Jeffries, Ivica Zubac, Norman Powell, Brandon Boston Jr., Keon Johnson, and Najee Marshall. Among these 10 candidates, important to add that only one of these candidates were former lottery selections, with that being Dyson Daniels. And outside of him, the top 10 field are all drafted 21st or later, with 3 going in the second and 2 being undrafted. And I think it's important to highlight Norman Powell and Zubac's season, being in year 9 and 10 and taking the leap into all-star contention after being career-long, very good starters and 6 Man of the Year candidates, with Norman going from averages of 13.9, 2.6 and 1 to 22, 3 and 2, while being a key piece on a very good Clipper team alongside Zoo, who went from a career 10 and 9 guy to having a 17-12 season. Among the top 10 candidates, the top 5 were Daquan Jeffries, Christian Braun, Quentin Grimes, Dyson Daniels, and Ty Jerome, with the winner being Ty Jerome with a net growth of 15.5 points, going from averages of 2 points, half a rebound, and 1.5 assists, albeit in 2 games after suffering an ankle injury, to make the leap into 6 Man of the Year conversations, averaging 12.5 points, 2.5 rebounds, and 3.5 assists, along with 1.1 steals. Ty narrowly edged Dyson Daniels for the win by 1.6 points, who in his own right played fantastic and grew into a very strong career all-defensive team guy, going from 5.8 points, 3.9 rebounds, and 2.7 assists to 14 points, 5.9 rebounds, 4.4 assists, and a league-high 3 steals per game, while becoming one of the premier defenders in the league. Rookie of the Year has always been the award where there's no real set-in-stone criteria as to what makes a player deserving of the award. Whether it's a player putting up what some might call empty stats on a bottom feeder team, or a guy putting up solid performances playing their role, you can trace this to the 2003 season with LeBron winning over Carmelo, the 2013 season with Michael Carter-Williams winning over Victor Oladipo, or the 2016 season with Malcolm Brogdon winning by default over Embiid simply not playing enough games. Basically, it's just a season-by-season case. Outside of simply using the eye test, in which it's unfortunate there's no real eye test stat, the best thing I could think of was simply breaking up the season into pre and post All-Star blocks. I believe that rewarding consistency is the appropriate way to determine who is the Rookie of the Year after seeing what has transpired over the last few Rookie of the Year award races, where a player maintains a consistent level of play while another has a slow start and explodes after the break. Recency bias tends to favour the explosive second-half player until common sense comes in, rewarding the consistent rookie. So with that said, using pre- and post-All-Star blocks for the 5 major counting stats, this is what we found. Of the 30 rookies who played 50-plus games, the average pre-All-Star score was 13.04 and post-All-Star was 17.6. And keep in mind, the average minutes played for these rookies was 20.5 minutes per game. And based on these numbers, our positionless all-rookie teams are as followed. Second team all-rookie: Donovan Clingan, Zachary Richache, Khalil Ware, Bub Carrington, Kyle Filipowski, and first team all-rookie being Isaiah Collier, Zach Edey, Yves Missy, Alex Sarr, and finally Stephon Castle, whom by the numbers is the Rookie of the Year with 24.8 points, narrowly edging Alex Sarr by 0.4. No number or metric can do any justice on how talented some guys really are on the defensive side of the ball. It doesn't matter if you're looking at defensive rating, defensive box plus minus, defensive win shares, or literally any obscure stat you can think of. Numbers quite literally don't tell the same story film does. While they don't tell the full story, they can highlight a player making a measurable impact on the game. So I used a variety of traditional and advanced stats to get a larger scope on things to identify the impact players on defense. Alongside the typical advanced stats you see tracked in Basketball Reference being defensive box plus minus, defensive win shares, and the player's block and steal percentages, I decided that while these were okay to use for a baseline number, there was a group of very good defenders that while you could argue are top 5 defenders in the league, no kind of mathematical gymnastics could put them in the position to be credited with an all-defensive team or Defensive Player of the Year award using these metrics, and you'll see this in particular with Toumani Camara and Evan Mobley. So with that, after a bit of research deciding between a few different sources for their own metrics, and decided that crafted NBA's DPM and D LeBron stats were the most viable option to use in making our own formula. To qualify, in accordance with the NBA's current CBA, all that is required is 65 games played and a 20 plus games nonsense, which we won't be following. The race for the Defensive Player of the Year award was the closest among the 5 awards, having scores range from 15 to close to 27. and the top 4 scorers, with first and fourth place being separated by 1.7 points, which brings us to our positionless all-defensive teams. Second team all-defense being Jared Allen, Jalen Williams, Ivica Zubac, Rudy Gobert, and Evan Mobley, with these 5 having scores of 21.84, 21.91, 22.385, 22.99, and 23.73. And first team all-defense consisting of Dyson Daniels with 24.4 points, Armin Thompson with 25.13, Chris Dunn with 25.55, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander with 25.91, and our defensive player of the year being Draymond Green, who posted a score of 26.85. Most valuable player is the award often given to the player deemed the most essential to the team's success, usually on one of the best teams in the league. It's not just about the player with the sexiest stats, but the players making the biggest impact and bringing the most value to their team. However, in today's era, the conversations are clouded by narratives, media bias, and the shifting of goalposts in order to further another narrative. Sometimes a player's value becomes inflated or unfairly diminished just to push an agenda and further a narrative in favor of the media's guy. And to combat the narratives, this brings us to the MVP formula. Pushing any and all bias and narratives to the side, we're simplifying the race by dictating the race by the numbers, which will help us find the top 15 players for positionless All-NBA teams, but also the NBA's most valuable player for the 2024-25 season. Again, to qualify, all that is needed is a 65-game threshold to be met, and the scoring is based off the following: the player's player efficiency rating, win shares, box plus minus, value over replacement, the player's games played divided by losses they played in, their points equivalent of their points, rebounds, assists, steals, and blocks, 5 extra points for being on first-seeded teams, and all of this added is their award score. The average MVP score among the eligible players was a score of 62.6, with the lowest score coming from Kyle Kuzma with 28.7. And among players that weren't eligible due to falling short of the 65-game threshold were Luka Doncic, Anthony Davis, and Victor Wembanyama, whom all finished in the top 10. Now, this brings us to our positionless All-NBA teams. Third team All-NBA being Anthony Edwards, Cade Cunningham, Steph Curry, James Harden, and Tyrese Halliburton. Second team consisting of Karl-Anthony Towns, Domantas Sabonis, Evan Mobley, Donovan Mitchell, Jalen Williams, and finally, first team All-NBA, which features LeBron James, Jason Tatum, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Nikola Jokic, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. The MVP race was a 3-man race between Giannis, Shai, and Jokic, with the score between the lowest of the 3 being Giannis with 111.48 and the next closest scorer being Tatum with a score of 88.08. And with this, the 24-25 NBA by the numbers MVP is Nikola Jokic with a score of 129.3. To put this number into perspective, his previous 3 MVP seasons he finished with scores of 125.1, 125.3, and 118.1. And in comparison to some seasons which are called the greatest individual seasons ever according to Jimmy Highroller, Michael Jordan in the 87-88 season finished with a score of 132.1, 99-2000 Shaq finished with a score of 129.17, and 2009 LeBron put up a score of 128.5. So basically, not only did Jokic have an historic 24-25 season, he had a season that will go down in history as one of the best ever, narrowly beating Shai, who in his own right had an all-time season with 125.4 points and leading the Thunder to the 7th most wins by a team in NBA history while having key starters missing time all over the season. And he was a key force in helping the Thunder put forth one of the best regular season teams in NBA history, having the highest margin of victory with 12.9, the most wins in a season by 15 or more points, and having the second highest team net rating behind the 72-10 Bulls in the 95-96 season, and on top of that, putting up 32, 5, and 6. Stats, whether you're talking regular counting or advanced. They can have their uses in certain situations, but by no means are they the end-all be-all when it comes to determining a player's talent and how good they truly are. While they're a useful tool to outline certain parts of a player's game, they have their flaws and can have the tendency to overvalue certain traits and have some players be overrated. The reality is, when you're talking basketball and trying to find what truly makes a player great, there's a lot more to it than a player's points, rebounds, assists, or their PER, their box plus minus, or their win shares. Because at the end of the day, in its simplest form, it's just basketball.